Cool. So welcome again to Developing Made Easy. Nothing to do with microphone or presentations, though. Yeah, we'll talk about ultimately tools, libraries, how we're trying to make your life, easier as a developer and make the developing experience simpler for you guys. So whether you're new to GCP or you've used it for a while, we think that everybody here has a thing or two actually to learn from this talk, so you can, again, be more productive. So we can just get started right ahead, but before, some quick introductions. Quick introductions, my name is Omar Ayoub. I'm a product manager in Google Cloud, and I focus on the developer experience, and specifically on client libraries. And I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I love to travel international affairs, and I have the pleasure today of being joined with Eileen.
Thanks, Omar. Hi, everyone. My name is...
Yeah, might want to use this one. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eileen Altıyok. I'm also a product manager in Google Cloud Platform, focusing on Cloud SDK. I live in New York City, and on a personal note, I love sailing as well as traveling.
That's the slide you wanted. Great. So that's why we both travel here today, to talk to you about developer experience. So specifically, what you can expect from today's talk is that we'll take you on a whirlwind tour of developer tools. So we have a lot of them. We won't touch on everything, but we're really going to focus on three mainly. The Cloud Shell, and we'll talk about some of the workflows that enables as well for you. We'll talk about the Cloud SDK, and Eileen's going to walk us through that. It's a set of tools and libraries we have in Cloud. And then we'll talk about the Cloud Client libraries, which are there to basically allow you to have programmatic access to our APIs. So before we jump into every artifact, just a quick visual about where do developer tools fall within the context of GCP. So we have the tools at the bottom here, and the idea is that they allow you to access the GCP services, as you would expect. And we have a lot of services. This is just a sample. The hexagons show you specific services. And the purpose here, the idea is to make it simple and easy, depending on what you're trying to achieve. You notice that we've separated the services into two buckets. This is not a hard thing. It's just for the purposes of this talk, it helps visualize. On the one side, we have the platforms. So by platform, we mean things where you want to run your code, right? So on the one hand, we have App Engine. This is our platform as a service offering, which allows you ultimately to run your code and not worry about anything else. So you write your code, you deploy it, and then you're up and running. Now, the thing is, we have two flavors of App Engine, and I just mentioned that because we will be referring to this during the talk. We have App Engine Standard, which is a sandbox environment, and we have App Engine Flex, which is based on containers. If you've used GCP before, you're familiar, this is all, known to you, but just to be sure we're on the same page. And then we have Container Engine. This is basically a cluster manager for your Docker containers. So you specify your Docker containers, and then we scale up, we scale down for you as a managed service. Now, one of the cool developer tools here in the workflow that we have, that we won't touch on today, but I encourage you to look into, is you can use Container Builder, which just went generally available very recently. You can use that to build your container images, which then will get saved to Container Registry, also in the cloud. It's a registry for your Docker container images. And then you can run this on Container Engine as a nice workflow from end to end. So I encourage you to go look into that for Container Builder. And finally, we also have Compute Engine. This is basically our infrastructure as a service offering. So you want a VM, we'll give you a VM, and you have full control, basically, of what you want to install and whatnot. So again, the idea here is that developer tools allow you to manage these resources, to push code on it, and you can see how CLIs or command line interfaces might be the good solution for this part. Then on the other side, we have our APIs, right? We have translation, storage, BigQuery. Ultimately, you want to get data when your application is running. You want to save in a table. You want to analyze a piece of text using the Cloud Natural Language API. All of that you would use, obviously, programmatic access, and client libraries is where you'll probably want to go in and be able to do this. And of course, your application running using these APIs could be running on one of the platforms, or it could be running locally or running on some, another platform. Great. Given that context, we can now start and talk about our different artifacts. So, quick story, actually. I came to SF like 2 days ago. I flew down from Seattle. So I'm in the airplane in the aisle doing my work, right? So I have my laptop. It has all my developer tools on it. I've been using it for a year and a half, so I have all my languages, all my GCP tools. I'm doing my work, and then out of nowhere, and this is a true story, by the way, on my left hand, I start noticing some code appearing then on my hand, then on my laptop, and like all over my laptop. And I look up, and the actual flight attendant, by mistake, just like dropped everything on my laptop. And I was wondering if that actually happened, but actually it does. So heads up, this might happen to you. So I get back to SF, I'm like, great. Obviously my data is all backed up, but I'm like, I have to get a new machine, reinstall everything. And for me to be even productive, minimally, I have to do all of that. And then my first thought was like, if only I could log on somewhere and have everything pre-installed, and I can just like hook up my data and I'll be up and running. Anyways, kind of a wishful thinking, but then I realized this is exactly what Cloud Shell does. So in reality, Cloud Shell, no kidding, is a command line interface where you log on in the cloud and you literally get access to a bunch of GCP tools, and you can start being productive right away. So by the way, this was not a setup story. Like this actually happened, and I just click. I'm like, man, this is amazing. This is like a perfect like timing for this. So literally, what actually happens is you only need a browser. You log on, nothing to install locally, and right there you have a bunch of tools pre-installed. And by tools, I mean like text editors. So you have Emacs, Vim, you have Nano, you have Git pre-installed, the Cloud SDK, which is a bunch of CLIs, and Eileen will talk about that a little bit later. But everything's pre-installed, up to date, you have nothing to do. And we support 7 languages out of the box. So we have Java, Go, .NET, Node, PHP, Python, Ruby, the interpreters, the compilers, the package managers. You can do pip install. It's all there. And the beauty is that it has built-in authorization. So no need to log on again. You can just execute, and it just works. I could give you guys more and more features, but probably easier if I just show you how it works in the console. So we'll switch to demo. Lovely. So what we're looking at right now is literally the main landing page when you log on to GCP. If you've done this before, this is not new to you. You're looking at projects, and every cloud resource you create will be within a project. So to manage these resources, if you go to the top left corner and you click on that, you'll see a menu with basically a bunch of so if you click on that, you will see a menu with a bunch of the services, some of which we talked about earlier: App Engine, Compute Engine, Container Engine. Anyways, the point being is that you can use that to do your management through the UI. But like we talked, what if you want to run some automation, you want to write some code, well, you probably need a shell for that. So if you go to the top right corner, you'll notice there's an Activate Cloud Shell. You click on that, and that will start the Cloud Shell. So what happens in the background, just to let you know, is that a virtual machine, a small one, gets created, and it has all the tools pre-installed right there. And what it does is it mounts 5 GB of storage that you own. So every person here, when you log on with your Google account, you get 5 GB of persistent disk storage for free. And that gets mounted as your home directory in the Cloud Shell because it's mounted on the VM. So if you do a PWD, for example, you would see that we're in the home directory of where we are. And everything you save in there will get persisted. So if you log off, you come back in a week, everything you save will be there. So you can see how you can start writing scripts, writing automation, writing some code, everything will be saved. And also, just to show you, if we do git dash version, you'll see that we have that installed as well. Now, we talked about Vim, talked about Emacs, always a big war between the two, which one's better. We have a solution, which is basically to go in the top left corner, you'll see here Files. And if you click on launching the code editor, this is experimental right now, but this is basically a UI for you to be able to do coding directly in the browser. So if you're more into that, and using a user interface, this is what you can do. And notice here that what we're looking at is your home directory also mounted. So whatever you save in there will get persisted again, just like earlier. It's the same view. All right, so we talked about having the tools. We talked about having a code editor. Everything is pre-set up. We have 5 GB of space. So in the next part, we'll just really create a very small web app in Python just to show you what can actually be done. And then we'll walk through some of the workflows so you can get a better idea of what's enabled directly from the console, again, without installing anything locally. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll create a new app. We'll call it, My App. And that will be a Python web app, so exactly very simple. So first thing we'll do, we'll create a main.py, and that will contain our main code. Now, we could go ahead and do that, but if you're familiar with App Engine standard, we do have a quick start in there that explains to you exactly how to get started, and this is exactly where we're going to go and copy that code. Again, the goal is to make it very simple, just to show you the other tools that we have around that. So in this case, you see that we have a very simple web application. We'll copy that in. And what it does is imports Web App 2, which is a App Engine standard web framework. Then we register a get handler where we just print out hello world, but we could change that to hello next, for instance. And then we're going to register the app for the handler, I mean. So that is done. We're done. That is the simplest possible web app we can do in Python. But given that we want to run this on App Engine standard, and you'll see that in a second, we're going to have to create an app.yaml file. So we'll just create this new file. This is very typical, just a way of telling App Engine, by the way, you're platform as a service, but you still need to know what type of application I am. So going back to the quick start, if you want to go and look, I encourage you to take a look at it. Very simple. And you see that we register, or simply tell App Engine that's Python, and we tell that what handlers we have registered. That's it. We're done. So we can go back to the Cloud Shell. And we've literally built an app. So if we do an ls, you see that we have a my app folder, saved in our 5 GB of persistent storage. We can log into that or cd to that. And then at this point, something else that's installed, pre-installed for you is the tooling for App Engine standard. So one of which being Dev App Server. So this is just a tool allowing you to do local testing. So Dev App Server, we pass in the app.yaml, hit enter, and this basically will start on the VM locally the actual web app. Now do notice that it's listening on port 8080. But if we went on the browser now in port 8080, we would be connecting to this machine, right? We want to connect to the VM. Well, in the top left corner of the Cloud Shell, you'll notice there's a button where you can click, and you have a web preview. And that allows you to connect to port 8080 only to your account on that machine, and you see that very seamlessly, it just worked. We can have Hello Next, we can do, obviously, you can make this much more complicated. This is just to get things going quickly. All right, so we have this. Imagine we love this app, it's exactly what we wanted, and now we want to deploy to App Engine standard, right? We want to make it live. So for that, we can just kill the application here, the testing, and go ahead and do GCloud app deploy. Now, we talked about GCloud a little bit because it's part of the Cloud SDK, but Eileen will give more details a little bit later. So GCloud is basically a command line interface that allows you to interact with the cloud services. In this case, app means App Engine, so it allows you to interact with the App Engine service. Deploy, to deploy our app, we pass in app.yaml, and then we'll just do -- version 2. This is not mandatory, but you'll see later we want to know the version. And version 2, I just made up something. So we can hit enter. Lovely. So this will run the background. Now, one thing we forgot to do, by the way, and we should probably do that right now, is version control. Best practice, let's do this well. Notice there's a plus button right next up here. We can create a new shell session. So you click on that, we start a new session, and now we can run the Git commands, right? So we do a cd into my app, and then we'll just do, the typical Git dance, like git init, git add star, and then we'll just do a git, git initial commit, a git commit -m, yeah, perfect, initial commit, great. So just to show you that you can do, obviously, a local repo because the 5 GB will get persisted. However, what if you want to collaborate with other people, right? Like software engineering, you're actually building an app, you want to share with others. You probably use GitHub or Bitbucket. I like to use Bitbucket for my private projects. But in this case, perhaps something you didn't know about is that we do have private Git repositories in Google Cloud Platform, and it's called the Cloud Source Repositories. So in a new tab, if you click on it, you go in the menu, you go lower down, you'll find under Tools something called Development. If you click on that, this is literally a fully featured private Git repo. So we can create a new repo. We'll call it stage repo. And that is ultimately a remote repository. Now, just to let you know, as an FYI, if you wanted to, you could still have stuff in Bitbucket or GitHub, and then automatically sync back to this repo, by the way. So you can keep both in sync. And there are advantages to that, as we'll see later, especially when you use App Engine. But for now, we'll do the typical workflow, right? We have our local repository, and we're going to push everything to this remote repository. So if we click on, I guess, repository on the left, we can just copy-paste the remote URL, go back to Cloud Shell, and git remote add, call it Google, and pass in the URL, and then we'll just do a git push Google master, right? And just for completeness, once this finishes, we'll head back to the repo and show you how all the files have been ultimately have been pushed. Beautiful. And you have everything you would expect here, right? You would have commit history, you can have branches, you can have tags, everything's there. Do diffs between files, it's all up in here. Okay, how are we doing on App Engine Standard? Did it deploy? Let's see. It did, awesome. So this is basically now a live URL. It took a couple of minutes, not even actually, because we were switching. And whatever we wrote is now live on App Engine Standard. So quick recap here, right? We have the Cloud Shell. A bunch of tools are installed. You can start coding, start developing. You have the code editor to do that. Then we do a bunch of Git. We push to a source repository. We're able to test locally. We're able to push to App Engine standard. And the last thing we're going to do in this workflow is debug it. So we'll go back to a tab. And maybe you're not aware of this. This is probably one of my favorite features, by the way, in products. You go to Stackdriver Debug. Now, what we're looking at here is literally a debugger in the cloud. So we're connected to GCP, right? If you notice here, there's a drop-down that says default-2. Remember when we specified the version 2? This is where it shows up. It's called default because we didn't specify a name to our App Engine application, but if we wanted to, the name would show up here. It picks up the App Engine running, and on the left-hand side, you see the files. Because we use Cloud Source Repository, it can pick up the files there as well and do the connection between the App Engine running, the code, right, and the files checked in the source repo. So now we're looking actually at the code that we wrote, we copy-pasted, and now we're going to put a snapshot point at some line. Do realize that I didn't say a breakpoint, because we're not breaking the app. What's going to happen here is that we're telling App Engine, hey, please, when you see the code or the application executing this code path, take a snapshot. Take a snapshot of the call stack, take a snapshot of the local variables, send it back to me. So if you now open the live URL that we have for App Engine, hit a refresh, it will execute the get, right? We go back, snapshot was hit. If you look in the lower right corner, you'll see the call stack, you'll see the local variables, everything you need. And just to be clear, we didn't stop the app. The app is still running. We didn't have to create another version to put log statements. This is live happening directly. And if you wanted to, you could also put a conditional snapshot point. So yeah, so that was basically the full end-to-end workflow. We can switch back to the slides now. So quick recap. I just said it, but really quickly, like the stuff you might want to look into a bit more. The Cloud Shell comes with the code editor and experimental, but it'll get better. It will obviously move to beta and everything else. We have App Engine, we have source repositories, and we have the Stackdriver debug. And all of that without logging on, with only logging on, without installing anything locally, as simple as we could make it. Now, if you think this is really neat, but is there more? The answer is yes. There is Cloud Shell Pro. So right now, actually, at Next, we have an alpha version open only to Next attendees. So you can have a bigger VM, more CPU, right, more RAM. So if you're interested, I highly suggest going to this bit.ly link, Shell-Pro. It's a small form. You can fill it out, and we'll reach out to you. And please, you can give us feedback. Let us know what you like. Let us know what's missing. Maybe more tools, whatever. We want to hear from you. Great. With that being said, now we can jump to the next part, which is the Cloud SDK, and Eileen will explain that to us.
Thanks, Omar. It was really cool to see all those actions you can do within browser with no installation. But what if you have a use case to access all these services within your local machine? Then Cloud SDK is your solution. It contains a bunch of command line tools that lets you access the Google Cloud services. For example, BQ to access BigQuery, GSUtil to access storage, and GCloud, which is the primary command line tool that lets you access multiple services like App Engine, Compute Engine, Dataproc, machine learning APIs, and many more. Indeed, I will focus on GCloud for my rest of the demo, but I'll also show you the components that you get when you install Cloud SDK. Configuration and installation is super easy. You can get it on Linux, Mac, or Windows. Actually, with no further slides, I will go ahead and jump into demo mode so we can see Cloud SDK in action. Awesome. So I'll just search. The first thing we have to do is to install it. So I'll just search Cloud SDK install, and we will go ahead the installation documentation here. And you will see there are a couple options that you can get it through zip file, or you can get it interactively by running a curl command. So if you haven't done so, I highly recommend you start your installation. I already installed it prior to demo, so I'm not going to do that. But let's start together. The next step you have to do after installation is initializing Cloud SDK. So in order to do that, we are going to run GCloud init command. So let me go back to my terminal, and let's run GCloud init. Oops. So this command, what this command will do is that it's going to create a new configuration. Or if you have already existed configuration, you can also switch in here. But I created one configuration before, but let's start a new one together. So this command will let us set up our project, our SDK, so we can talk to cloud services online. So first thing we have to do is to give a name, the configuration. You can create multiple and switch between. And it's going to ask us the username we want to connect to services. So I already used multiple usernames before, but let's go ahead and start with a new account. So this is going to open a browser and let us to choose account. So this is the demo account we created before. Then Cloud SDK asks for certain permissions to access services. Let's allow it, and boom, we are authenticated to Cloud SDK. If we go back to our terminal, now you notice that we are getting all the projects that was created under this account before. So I created a project before in the UI console, next demo GCloud, so we will use it for the rest of the demo. And the last question is if you want to set the compute engine settings, this is going to mainly ask us the zone. So I'll go ahead and set the zone so we don't get prompted for the zone in the future, but you can always set the zone flag or change it in the future. So I'll just go ahead and select US Central 1A, hit that, and awesome. We are all set and ready to talk to services now. Let me clear it. Okay, remember I mentioned to you Cloud SDK contains a bunch of command line tools. Let's go ahead and verify which components you get after you install. So when I run GCloud components list command, these are all the components we see. Some of them are installed by default, like BQ, GSUtil, GCloud, and there are multiple more that is not installed by default, but if you have use case, you can always go ahead and run GCloud components update command. And for example, kubectl, if you have a use case to access Kubernetes CLI, you can go ahead and run this command to update and install those components. So I'm not going to do that. We are not going to focus on that, but you get the idea. And notice that there are two also GCloud specific commands under beta and alpha. I installed this prior to demo. These are not installed by default, but I will show you a very cool feature today under alpha commands, which is our experimental command groups that we are currently working on, which is available to public as long as you install this command group. So I recommend you to get GCloud components update to alpha. And you notice here, you see also the version. If your version is pointing to old one, you can always verify here. Our team is launching versions often, so I recommend you to check and get the latest. Perfect. Now we installed SDK, we initialized it, we checked the components, and we get the ones that we are going to use. Now what is next? So we have to know which command to run, right? And I assume some of you may not know how to run GCloud commands. So there are two ways you can figure out which commands to run. The first thing could be GCloud help. You can run it, and this is going to bring you basically the manual page, the reference page to see the flags that's available, the commands that is available. You can see like the app that we used before to access app engine, compute engine, container, and so on. Or you could do the same thing by going to our reference page here, and you see exactly the same information if you prefer to see it in browser. But here is the problem. If you are trying to basically come up with the command that you never used before, or if you are trying to discover new services, so this context switching between the manual page, come back, and continue typing may be inefficient and time-consuming. In order to solve this problem, we have been working on a feature called GCloud Interactive Shell, which lets you get auto-prompting of the commands and the flags as you type with inline documentation. So you don't need to do this context switching. OK, let me show it so you get the idea. Remember I mentioned to you that I have something cool to show you under alpha commands? This is it. And we are just announcing it today. So GCloud Alpha Shell, if you run it, this is going to bring up the shell mode. You can see your configuration at the bottom here that we authenticated our username. You see the project that we picked up, and now you can start using it. So we don't know how to use it. How about we create a compute instance together? So I just start by typing C, and it gives me auto-prompting of the commands, and I can go through them. And in here, I see the description of those, and I see the syntax, how to use it. And if this information is not enough, since there is a limited space, you can always Ctrl-W to open the full browser. So before going to compute user journey, remember Omar mentioned earlier that container builder went to generally available recently. What if you want to learn how to use that command? So we would type container, let hit space, and this gets us all the commands available under container service. So we can go through, OK, builds is the one that we want to run, and we hit space, and we get through all the groups, command groups under that. And submit is the one that lets you run your local Docker file and move it to container registry. Then you can deploy it to your container engine after. It's really cool that we had no idea how to run this command before, but we can discover basically the services this way. And when you look at the syntax, the next thing for us to put the source here, the Docker file source, or a -- config, or the tag flag, and hit run, this should work fine. But if you want to see more, like I mentioned, Ctrl-W would go to the reference page online, and you can go through everything here and understand and read more if you want to. So let's go back. Today, I'm not going to focus on container. We had an intention to create compute before, right? So let's go back to our original example, compute. Let's go through instances, and we will create. But you see all the available commands here. Let's hit create. And perfect. I see the syntax here. The next thing I need to give a name. Let's give a name, stage VM. And this is it. This should work, right? I run it, so this is going to take a couple seconds to create the VM, but you get the idea. You had no idea how to run the compute command or a container command. We discovered it. We solved the usage. And basically, we created a compute instance without hitting any errors and successfully ran the command here. So with this, just on time, it just created the instance. So I will exit from this shell mode, and we'll show you more advanced feature. Now we know how to run commands, but most of you probably want to take these and automate these workflows with your script, right? So in order to do that, I will show you some advanced feature to empower your scripts. So let's run the command that will list us all the instances we created, including the one that we just created. See in here, stage VM is the one we just created running, and prior to our demo, I created some instances. I terminated some of them just to give you a feeling of how it looks like. So now, when you run this command, you get human-readable summary. But in your scripts, you prefer to get a format that is computer-readable, right? So we support formats like YAML, JSON, CSV, and more. So if we run the same command by passing the format flag equals to JSON, we would get exactly same result, but in JSON with more fields available for your scripting. Let me clear now. And let me run the same command, instances list. OK, how about next step? Maybe you are only interested in the VMs that is currently running. So you can go ahead and programmatically filter out the ones that is running, but you don't need to. We also have a command for you that is -- filter. When we do that, we can specify any field equals to any value, so we can get the filter by the value we wish to. So we wanted status equals to running, right? Let's run it, and perfect. This gave me just the running one. So you don't need to programmatically do that. And I also want to mention that you can mix and match the filter and format. Remember earlier we did the format for JSON. We could also get specific value. Like we don't need, maybe we are only interested in getting the name of the VM. So we would say value, name, run it, perfect. We get just the values of the names. And as a next step, what we could do, take this command and pass it to maybe to compute instances delete as an input. So you want to delete after you are done. So you just pass the names to another command. So you can pipe the outputs to as an input to another command, so you can create it more sophisticated workflows this way. So with this, we also have more functionalities that is built in for you, like sorting. You can label, and you can do some formatting for dates and strings, and many more. So I encourage you to go through our documentation and see other features that could empower your scripts. With this, I am done with my demo. Let's go back to our slides. Perfect. So today, we took the journey of installing Cloud SDK, and we initialized it to be able to talk to services. We picked our username, we get the project, we set some compute zone by default, we created a configuration, right? And then we moved on to see some components. We went through the components of BQ, GSUtil, we saw alpha commands, beta commands, and specifically for an alpha command, today we saw an interactive shell that lets you get the auto-prompting of flags and commands, so you don't need to context switch as you are typing. This is a perfect tool for you to discover new commands or discover the usages. Then we took the journey of discovering a container builder, and then we moved and we created a compute VM together. Then we moved to create more, to see some more advanced features like filtering, formatting, and just to give you an idea to empower your scripts and automate these workflows. So as a next step, I really highly encourage you to install SDK. Please get the alpha components. Try to run GCloud alpha shell. And please give us feedback by running GCloud feedback command. Awesome. Thank you so much. With that, I will give it to Omar to cover client libraries next.
Thank you. Thanks, Eileen. Great. Still works. Awesome. So client libraries. So we looked at how to use the Cloud Shell, how to run commands and tools, how to use the Cloud SDK. Again, everything in the shell, right, using a CLI. Now we're going to talk more about programmatic access to our APIs. So we have Cloud APIs. We have many of them, 35 plus, right? And what is an API, ultimately? It's an interface. You get a version. It expects parameters, a request body, and you get a response. You have to parse it. Now, of course, you could go and use the endpoint directly and literally code against the endpoint and do all of that auth and request and response parsing yourself. But clearly, this is a talk about making things easier, so that would not be fun for anyone. Not fun to get started, and also not fun to just keep going, right? So ultimately, you want to have client libraries that allow you to connect to these services in a fun, idiomatic way. So in cloud, like I said, we have about 30 plus APIs, 35 plus. About a third of those are now using the new Google Cloud client libraries. So we haven't covered all of them yet. We're working on that, but a good third of them are ready for you to go and play with and have fun with. And the whole idea is to make these libraries more usable, a simple interface, idiomatic, and more importantly, well documented. Because you could have the best library in the world if you don't have samples to get started and good examples to keep going and more tutorials or how-to guides, you'll probably, at some point be frustrated. And heads up, we actually support 7 languages here as well. Again, Go, Java, .NET, PHP, Python, Node, Ruby, and everything is open source on GitHub. So again, we'll just jump directly to showing you how to use basically this programmatically. So never mind, we switch back to the demo. So actually, we're going to walk through a user journey, very simple one. So you've probably heard about, obviously, the machine learning APIs. It's a big deal, rightfully so, and probably the vision API. So imagine you're curious about it, you want to make use of it, how can I call it? So first thing you probably do is just search for it, right? So we'll walk through that flow and see how you'll be able to make a call as a quick start. So we do a quick search. We see the second link here, beautiful, is the Cloud Vision API. So if you haven't seen it yet, the Cloud Vision is you send us to our service an image, we analyze it, and we return to you back a response with what is in that picture, right? An analysis with labels, with scoring, and all of the above. And in fact, if you scroll a little bit on that landing page, you notice there's a Try the API. I highly encourage you to try it out if you haven't done yet. So we can just drag and drop a photo. I think we have one ready even. Perfect. And it's a cat. Drag and drop it just to show you the kind of information we'll get back. It's able to pick up it's a cat, 99% accuracy, or scoring, it's a mammal, vertebrate. So you get all these labels back directly thanks to the API returning you this information. And by the way, you'll notice a bunch of extra data like web properties. You can see a color gradient also it can give you back. And finally, you also have the JSON response if you wanted to parse the JSON. Great, but you're a developer, so you want to be able to call this programmatically. So we're just going to go and click on the view documentation to go a little bit more in what we have here. So this is a very standard documentation. We explain to you stuff. But one thing I want to bring to your attention is that in the APIs and reference section, there is a client libraries place, or item, rather. If you click on that, that will open the client libraries page. And this is what I'm saying. We're adding more and more of these across all of Cloud APIs. And the whole point is to show you how to get started. So how to install the library, how to set up auth, and then how to make an API call. So just for fun, we'll try it in Node.js, see what happens. Any Node developers in the room, by the way? Yeah, okay, that's him. It's perfect. So we'll just open, we'll copy the installation, open a terminal, and then are we in the right place? Yes, we are. Perfect. We'll just npm install. While this is installing, we'll go back to the actual documentation and just copy the code, at the bottom. Yeah, perfect. And then open Sublime. We'll just use Sublime for this case, and create a new file that we'll call it, vision.js. So just to walk you through really quickly on what's happening here. So we basically import the module. Then we have to set a project ID. Our project ID is called next and friend, but the moment you've created, initially you log on to GCP, and you're in that console UI, you create a project as your first thing, you put the ID here, you instantiate the client, then you specify a local resource in this case of what is the file we want to analyze, the image, and then you call detect labels. That's it. Now in our case, we don't have wake up cat, so if you open where we have actually under resources, we call it picture, and then you'll notice that it's actually the Eiffel Tower. So we're going to ask the Vision API to figure out what the heck this is. So back to the terminal. We'll just run basically, the terminal actually. Oh, sorry. She's better than me, you can tell. And then node, pass in vision, lovely. What we get back is a bunch of labels, which is perfect. Tower, landmark, monuments, everything you would expect from this, right? But the thing is, we know this is the Eiffel Tower, so how come we didn't get the Eiffel Tower? Because we asked for labels, we didn't ask for a landmark. So just as a heads up, if you go back to the cloud documentation, there's always these how-to guides that we have. And these are meant to show you how to do something. And given that this is an API, the whole point is to show you how to do different calls on the APIs and how to make use of the API. So if you click here on detecting landmarks, you'll notice that we want to show you in our 7 languages, right, all of the samples and all of the examples per language. If there's a language missing or 2 missing, it's just because it's coming. We're working hard at adding all of that. But again, to make you productive. So in this case, Node.js is selected. You look at the example. It's pretty much the same as the quick start we saw earlier. Only difference is that at the bottom, we're calling detecting landmarks. Great. As simple as that. We can copy this, go back to the code, update the call. And then, oh yeah, perfect. And if we execute it, you'll notice that it will, well, let's not predict the future. There we go. I figured out that it was the Eiffel Tower. Notice that there was no scoring on this because this is the non-verbose version. But if you wanted to make it more verbose, you can have and pass a bunch of options. And for that, one last quick thing. If we go back to the client libraries page, at the bottom, there's always an additional resources that we're adding. Just to let you know, you have links over there to basically the API reference documentation. You have links to the source code. You want to ask a question on Stack Overflow. And just to let you know, within the client library reference, so the API reference, we're adding a lot of examples also in there, just to make sure that as you're learning about the API, looking different methods, we also have an example right there to help you to make it simple. And lastly, everything is on GitHub, so just as an FYI, if you go to the Google Cloud Platform Organization, we have all of these repos, Google Cloud Node, Google Cloud Ruby, in all 7 languages. Now, if you're wondering, how come we talked about 7 languages earlier with the Cloud Shell? We're talking about now 7 languages with the client libraries. Is that a coincidence? Well, actually, it's not. There is a cloud GCP-wide effort of bringing you forth these 7 languages as first-class citizens. We want to make sure that as a developer, when you come to GCP and you want to put on your my language lens and be able to look at GCP from that lens, we have the documentation for you and the tools for you and things to get you started. So if you actually go to cloud.google.com/docs, at the very, very top, you'll notice that there's a bunch of languages. These are the languages that we support. In fact, if you click on Java, for instance, you'll see that this is a landing page for Java. We have quick starts, we have tutorials, we have code samples, all of that with the idea of hey, you're a Java developer, you want to learn about this in a Java reality with a Java lens, right? we got you covered. So you can learn about App Engine Flex, App Engine Standard, all of that using Java. In this case, if you click on Tools, we also have a bunch of tools for you as a Java developer. Remember how in the console UI, we used a debugger, we used ultimately the cloud source repositories, all these tools that we had for you? Well, if you're a Java developer, you probably use an IDE, right? So IntelliJ or Eclipse. So it'd be kind of neat to have all of these tools directly in your IDE, so you don't have to move away from your IDE and stay in your environment and work from there. So in the next part of the demo, we'll actually show you that. So we've already pre-installed the IntelliJ plugin and the IntelliJ itself. And if you open here, we already have a project here that we've created. So just a heads up, if you were to go to the App Engine Flex documentation, there is a quick start there as well that has a code sample. So we basically just git clone the repo, which is called Getting Started Java. And you notice there's also some code there. So if you wanted to look into this a bit more, I encourage you to go and do the App Engine Flex Java quick start. But all we did is that we installed IntelliJ, we installed the plugin, we git cloned the repo, so now we're ready to go, and we have that open right here. If you look, it's very simple. All we do again is the hello world, we do a do get, right? We handle the get request. So we want to show you some of the tools we have in IntelliJ, but before doing that, just make sure that Java developers know we have some love for them as well. It's also as easy to get started with the client libraries. So in this case, we'll just use a translation API. Translation API, another one of our machine learning APIs. If you go to the client libraries page, now that you know about it, you see that we have, in this case, our Maven dependency, so we can hop back to the getting started, open the POM file, and then just add this as a dependency. Great. This is done, and now we can copy-paste also the code. So just to explain what the code does, ultimately, it instantiates the client, right? Defines the text we want to translate from one language to another, and therefore, after that, we simply have a source language and a target language. So in this case, we just copy-pasted the imports, and then we'll copy-paste this part. Lovely. And then you see here, we translate from English to Russian. We'll probably just, try French, just Eiffel Tower moment. And then we can just, yeah, perfect. And yeah, obviously, we're now printing this to the console, but since we want to return this to the browser, we'll just update what we return back and do a concatenation. Cool. So, by the way, we also installed the Jetty plugin. So if, as a web server, you might use something else, Tomcat, for example, but in this case, Jetty works well. If we run this, this will basically do a local testing of the web app, and then we'll just show you how quickly and how easy it is while Jetty is loading this. Great. And if you do a quick zoom, for those who know French, hello world is bonjour le monde. We got it. That simple, that quick, that easy. Cool. And the last piece really here, just to make it clear, is that we talked about doing all these workflows in the cloud UI. You can, like I said, do Git, push to cloud source repositories as a remote repo, do debugging, deploy to App Engine. Well, because we installed the Cloud Tools for IntelliJ plugin, if you click on Tools, you'll notice that we have a Google Cloud Tools menu or entry here. And you can do exactly what we did earlier. You can set up the cloud source repo there. You can attach to a debugger and do live debug. You can deploy to App Engine Standard and App Engine Flex. In fact, if you click on Deploy to App Engine, you'll notice that you can select your project ID. You can set some information about your application, just like we did earlier, and push it up to App Engine and have it run in and scale up and scale down. Great. So yeah, that was that part. We can switch back to the slides. Lovely. So again, the whole point here is that we want to make your developer experience easier. So you want to use Node, you want to use Go, .NET. We want to give you client libraries that are easy to use, well documented. We look at Vision with Node.js. We look at the translation API with Java. There's Cloud Tools for IntelliJ, but we have that for Eclipse. We have that for Visual Studio. Again, all with the idea to meeting you where you are as a developer. And if you want to learn more about each of these languages, I recommend going to one of these language documentation set and learn about the tools that we have for you. And we'll keep adding them, making them better with the developer in mind. Great. We can jump into the wrap-up. So this is everything we covered: Cloud Shell, Cloud SDK, Cloud Client Libraries. And if you want to dig deeper in more of these, I suggest looking at these talks. So some of them already happened yesterday. Some of them are happening, I believe, this afternoon and tomorrow. Ruby, I think, is right after this. If you want to learn more about how we're supporting your language in GCP, DSOCs is something that you want to look at. And also, the videos will be online, so you might want to look into that. And finally, as next steps, sign up. If you're interested in Cloud Shell, you can do Cloud Shell Pro. Sign up at this bit.ly link. Learn about it. Let us know what you think. We want to make sure that we hear you. Download the latest Cloud SDK, just like Eileen was saying, to try out the alpha features and play with that. And you can send feedback at GCloud feedback. GCloud send feedback. And then try out the client libraries. For everything we talked today, you can go to this link, which is a GitHub repo, next-17, under my username, just to see all the stuff we talked about, links, and the form for Cloud Shell Pro. So everything will be in one place so you can refer back to this. If you have questions for me, you can also just file an issue. I'll be happy to answer. And that was it. That's it. Cool.